right, well, hey everybody, welcome back. Just standing in the aisle, looking at the layout, thinking about next steps and where I go from here, and just kind of zoomed in on the little pasture scene we did with all its unballasted track. But if I pull out, I'm right here at eye level, standing in the aisle. And so we've done some work over there, did this field, those kits there. As I move this way, got the pine trees there. We've got our overpass scene. We start coming over here into the yard. There's the structure we just did. So I'm, again, moving left to right. So next thing up is these two structures here, which sit on what will serve as rip tracks for this yard. And I'm kind of toying with using these couple of kits, or maybe I want to use something different, but I've been kind of thinking about it over the past couple of days, week or so, really. As I was wrapping up details there, I was starting to think about this, and I think I'm going to go with what I have. And the reason for that is I like the idea of this. The red structure is kind of an older looking structure with an end piece to it. So I'm thinking about, if I pull in a little bit on that end there, thinking about doing a little bit of a pitched roof on the red part and have it tie into as if they'd added on to that building with what's now sort of that, cream colored plastic. I'll make that brick as well, obviously. But kind of have like a older structure tying into a newer structure. And on that one, maybe I'll do a little bit of a flat roof and just give it some interest. But I'm viewing, as I pull out here, I'm viewing this whole structure from there to there as one structure, old part with a new addition to it. But I'm gonna probably do it all together as one big piece. And I think I might use some foam core board to brace things up. I may even cut out one of the doors here on the red structure and do a little interior. Just thinking about it. The original track plan here, where the red structure is, actually had that track enclosed inside of a building. But first of all, I've got a million kits laying around and none of them have the opening that I would need to make that happen on the end. So that's problem one. And probably, the other thing I was thinking about as I was perhaps rationalizing not having to go out and buy something, this is not a major yard. It's not a division point yard on the seaboard. So the fact that they even had repair tracks here at all in my world is probably already a bit of a stretch. But then to have a ginormous facility for heavy repairs where things are having to go inside of buildings and stuff, it's probably a little bit of a stretch anyway. So that's kind of my plan. I'm gonna roll with that. All right, just a quick in progress here. I've got those two walls glued together. I ended up having to remove, as the two sections came together, they all have this column on the outside, so I had to cut the one off of this piece, and you can see the seam. But it came together pretty good, I think, with a little bit of paint and stuff. If you're looking at it from the side, it just disappears along with all the rest of the seams. So, head on, you can kind of see the crack. It's not painted yet, and as you come around the side, it's less so. And then I've also, as I pivot around to this side, cut that end piece to fit. So probably before I glue that together, I will paint this section. So that's probably what I'll be working on next. And I did come through with the track gauge, HO scale, and MRA gauge, and just make sure I had enough clearance there between the track and the front facade of that building. And that's how I set the length of that end piece, because it's going back up against the backdrop there. So that's where we are. And this one I'm going to paint similar to that structure there. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but Scott with the Chessie, Pennsylvania Division channel recommended leaving a little space for an alleyway there. And what I'm going to do to cover up the space between the two buildings is I've got just some titchy fence I'll paint up and weather and slip in there to hide the bottom of the backdrop, and I think that'll work pretty well. I was going to use that fence line all along the back of this structure here, but that would just kind of cover up details and cover up the bottoms of the buildings, and I don't really want to do that. So I like his idea better, so I'll put it there. and that helped slide everything to the right nicely, so that building fit nicely in that spot into the track there. Doesn't go in the building, it's just I'm going to pile up some ties or a pile of ballast or something on the end there. And then the red building will come all the way down. You won't be able to see the trees in there. That building will come to the left all the way up flush against that. So this one, like I said, will be kind of a newer brick, more in that color, but I won't weather it so much. And then this, I'm gonna make a much older looking brick. This was the original building, then they added on later. So quick update, that's where we're at. More to come. All right, got out my Vallejo plastic putty and worked it into that seam a little bit. So now it's not as obvious. That's actually two separate pieces put together. So I think that's gonna look well. By the time I paint over it, I don't think you'll ever realize there was a seam there that wasn't supposed to be there. Like I mentioned in the last cut, this is the extra pilaster that was on the side of this one. It was on the end that I removed so that I didn't have an extra wide pilaster in the middle to kind of make that work. I've also got the end of this one taped off. This surface on the inside here, that surface, is what will actually be cemented to the back of that one. Sorry for the camera there, I kept knocking it. The long pieces are where the brick pattern is printed on the end. So that means the little short one goes around, butted up against the back of the long front piece. So mask that off so that it takes cement better. And once this dries, I'll get it primed up and start painting this brick. And here we are, just primed with Tamiya XF2 flat white. So primed and ready to go. All right, now I'm doing the red structure, putting the 4 wall pieces together. I sanded them down much like I did on the first structure. Cleaned up the edges, and on this one, because it's 4 pieces and it's a little longer, I added some bracing to the back just with some styrene sheet. And then I went ahead and used the one at the top. That'll be where the roof will sit, and it'll actually be a pitched roof. On the back of this, which will be the end of the building, I'll put a little bit of a pitch to it. So it'll be something like, that, somewhere in there. So that is the beginnings of the second building. My thinking is get them both sort of built into flats like this, but I won't put the ends on and get a funky shape. I'll get these built, I'll get it primed just like I did the other one, and then I'll paint the two kind of together with different colors, but I'll do them sort of simultaneously. More to come. All right, quick in progress. I've been painting the 2 structures that'll make up the warehouse stuff around the rip track area. And I'll start with this one, which was the first one I showed in terms of putting it together. This was the DPM kit. And what that is mostly folk art terracotta with a bit of burnt sienna mixed in, and then I diluted it pretty heavily with water and just did washes over the bricks. And that's got 3 or 4 washes on there now. Starting to get the color in there. I may come back and dry brush some more of the terracotta onto the surface of the bricks, because I think, because I did it kind of as a wash, a lot of it's collecting down in where the mortar lines will be. So I'll see kind of how it looks. It's mostly dry now. So that's what's going on this building. And that other one, after priming it with white, I came back over it with just some flat red rattle can. And then Jason Jensen did a video recently with a Walther's kit and showed a sponge painting technique. And that's what I've done here. So the base is that flat red color. And then if I pan over here without making y'all seasick, I worked off this color palette. The base paint is very close to burnt sienna, so I put some of that on there. And then I worked my way lighter with some terracotta. I used a little different orange because this is what I have, called Autumn Leaves, which actually not my favorite color, but it worked. And a little yellow ochre mixed in. If I show that real quick, you can see I was mixing stuff all together, all kinds of ways. And then kind of came over the top with a little bit of this Tuscan red at the end just to kind of tie things together. And so that's what that looks like. Very splotchy looking at this stage of it. But in Jason's video, you can see how when he puts the mortar on there, it pulls a lot of that together, kind of tones things down a bit. So I'm gonna try that same method. All right, so mortar lines. Gonna work on the DPM kit, the one that'll be to the left. This was the one that was molded in white plastic earlier, as you can see by some of the places where the paint didn't get. So after the base brick color was put on, I let that dry real well, and then I came in with a gloss coat. And I used this Rust-Oleum crystal clear enamel. It's a gloss coat. So that's now been on there for about 12, 13 hours. And I think that's pretty well cured at this point. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm switching over to oil paints for these mortar lines. So in the palette here, I've got a little bit of titanium white and a little bit of raw sienna, as well as some odorless mineral spirit. So I'm gonna tint the white with a tiny little bit of that raw sienna to give it kind of a tan color, and that'll be the mortar I'm gonna use. And the reason that we've got the clear gloss coat on there is because that will allow the oils to flow better than they normally would. In situations where you want your paint, especially oil paint, to flow really well, like if you're streaking or doing some rust effects, or something like this where you're trying to get the paint only down in the cracks, the gloss coat will help accomplish that, because it's a smoother finish and it'll flow really nicely into the low areas, which is where we want it. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up that wash, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so I've got the wash mixed up. It's this kind of light tannish orangey color here. I think that'll work well with the terracotta color brick we went. This will all get weathered later. So I'm gonna go ahead and just grab this, and it should flow very nicely into the mortar lines. And y'all can see that it's doing just that. And being that this is oil, I've got plenty of time to work it. It's not going to dry anytime soon. Pull in on it a little bit so you can see better. So if I just touch it, it just flows so nicely. And that's one of the benefits of working with oils, especially on a gloss finish. All right, shifting attention to the other building, the darker colored older building. Ready to do the mortar lines here. And for this one, I'm gonna try something I saw on Jason Jensen's channel. Gonna use some joint compound, watered down a lot, and I'll tint that with some gray. That's just pale gray by Folk Art. So I'll get this stuff mixed up, and maybe I'll show putting it on here, and then and the technique he showed, at least, for getting it back off and leaving it just down in the cracks. So let me get this mixed up, and then I'll show you what it looks like going on. Well, I thought I would end the video here, kind of at a nice stopping point in the construction process of those rip track buildings. And look what's come. Not sure what that second car is. Yeah, some of y'all might recognize that. That is from Dave's Crooked River in Eastern. When he was in town last weekend, he brought that, left it with me as a gift. Really nice boxcar, really cool. So thank you, Dave. As we watch the train run by, I will pick up the current build I'm working on next week. Thanks for watching.